Hello, everyone. This video is dedicated to demonstrate the practice interview for task 5.7. Here at Career Foundry, I am at the fifth achievement, data ethics and applied analysis. And we are focusing on the task 7 of that achievement for using GitHub as an analyst. So on that task, we have two parts. First, to demonstrate how to use the GitHub, which is demonstrated at the GitHub, and the link is provided at the end of this presentation. And this is the second part for the interview practice. So on this second part of this task, we have 5 main questions, and the last question is to see and check privacy settings for the GitHub and repository, and to provide links for the GitHub and the video of this practice interview. We are going to see each individual questions and provide basically answers and the clarifications for each individual of them. The first question will be, what does the CRISP-DM or CRISP-DM methodology for data mining entail? What does the data analyst do in each step? So to answer this question, we need to clarify what this acronym is standing for. So this acronym is standing for Cross-Industry Standard Process for Data Mining. It is an industry-proven way to guide your data mining efforts. You may find it very helpful when you intensively working with data at a big data level. So as a methodology, it includes description of the typical phases of a project, the tasks involved with each phase, and an explanation of the relationships between these tasks. So it is a very handy tool for an analyst. So this methodology encompasses 6 elements that we are going to see them one by one. The first element will be the business understanding, which is the first step. And it is all about understanding business goals and the priorities, so you can tailor your data mining projects to support them. Without the basic understanding of the business, an analyst will be having a hard time to come up with a expected result. Second element is data understanding. After we understand the business, we are going to see what the data looks like, the nature and genesis of the data itself. This step involves gathering data and checking it for any quality issues such as errors, missing values, or inconsistencies. A third one will be the data preparation. Once we know what the data is, we are going to prepare it for following actions. In this step, you will get your data ready for analysis. Much of your time will be spent selecting and cleaning the data. So once we uncover any data quality or integrity issues in the previous step, we will need to document what we need to resolve them and keep it ready for actual analysis. Fourth element of this methodology is modeling. The modeling phase is when you decide which combination of logic and algorithms, also known as a model, to apply to your data set. A decision that will be influenced by goals and nature of your project, basically. This is the very important phase of the methodology. Next one will have the evaluation. In this step, you will assess whether your model meets the business goal identified in step 1, which is in our business understanding. We will measure it if we are consistently working from our standing point. Final will be deployment. Once we pass through all those stages of the methodology, that means we are almost done with our assignment. So the deployment will be to just release the findings we get and making sure that our findings are convenient, compliance, and expectation of the committee that we are working for is met in a quality-wide. Next one is a second question, which is about time series analysis. And the question reads like this. Explain what needs to be done before you can forecast time series. In other words, what does time series analysis involve? So here, the most crucial step when we're considering time series forecasting is understanding your data model and knowing which business questions need to be answered using the data that we are working in. So by dividing into the problem domain, a developer can more easily distinguish random fluctuations from stable and constant trends in historical data. This will be a key contribution of the data analysis analyst as well. Let's add one more point here. What does time series analysis involve? So when we are talking about time series analysis, what is in it is very important point of that discussion. So time series forecasting occurs when you make scientific predictions based on historical time stamped data. It involves building models through historical analysis and using them to make observations and drive future strategic decision making for that matter. And another point here is time series analysis is a specific way of analyzing a sequence of data points collected over an interval of time. In time series analysis, analysts record data points at consistent intervals over a set period of time, rather than just recording the data points intermittently or randomly. We're going to have a trend to establish and follow that trend accordingly. We do have steps here on predictive analysis. We first define project scope and goal, and then collect and prepare the data, testing the analysis. And we work on modeling here, finally deployment. And after that, we're going to have continuously monitoring and working how the data is validated. So we can have a monitoring and validation phase of that step. Third question will be about data ethics. A question read like this: discuss the main principles of data ethics, as well as what companies or organizations could do to uphold these principles. So here we have four basic principles of data ethics. First one is privacy, and then transparency, accountability, finally, equality. These are the founding principles of data ethics. We can see them one by one as follows. For example, privacy. Individuals should be in control of their personal data. Organizations must comply with data privacy laws and get the consent of an individual before they collect and share private information. See, when we work in data, this is a very crucial element of our contribution, privacy, which is highly related with legal and regulations and reputation matters of the industry we are working for. So we need to make sure privacy is protected at all times. Next one is transparency. Individuals should have a clear overview of data that organizations collect and share. This means that organizations need to be transparent about how they handle and process data, both internally and externally. So every time we make a significant decision or take place a significant action, stakeholders that they need to know about that has to be informed accordingly. Accountability is the third principle of data ethics. Organizations are responsible for data that they collect and share. They must safeguard an individual's private information and be held accountable if this is not the case. Anytime private information is compromised, So the organization or the company that collects and owns the data is responsible for any legal and regulative consequences. Finally, we are going to see about equality. Organizations must be careful not to disadvantage or discriminate against individuals or groups when handling and processing data. As we all know, in the previous exercises, it can go all the way from the very first achievement we had here at Career Boundary. Data will always lend itself to human bias, which can lead to discriminatory practices, and this needs to be avoided and managed at higher confidence. First question will be about a predictive model. The question is like this. Imagine you are an analyst at a financial services company and you have some concerns about bias in the way a predictive model was measured. How would you arise your concerns with your manager? Make sure suggestions for how to make some suggestions for how to avoid measurement bias in this future. So in order to avoid bias, you need to ensure that your sample size is large enough, random, and diverse. This is the basic concept that we learn about data modeling. So when I find out any kind of bias, I need to discuss as an analyst with my manager whether the data has a sufficient sample size and random nature of collection and diverse content. Without this, the possibility of bias is becoming more serious than we need to professionally communicate about it with a manager. The second point that I would like to emphasize will be making sure that my instruments or methods are valid, reliable, and aligned with objectives. And finally, I would make sure that my respondents are informed, willing, and comfortable to participate in the process of data analysis from beginning up to deployment stage. Question number 5 is about regression and classification. We are going to compare and contrast those two ways of data analysis. Question read like this. Explain the difference between regression and classification models in predictive analysis. When would you use one of these models over the others? So let's classify the question in two separate questions. First, what is the difference between classification and regression? In short, the main difference between classification and regression in predictive analysis is that classification involves predicting discrete categories or classes. Regression, on the other side, involves predicting continuous or real value quantities. So this is the key difference. We can rephrase it as follows. The key distinction between classification and regression algorithm is regression algorithms are used to determine continuous values such as price, income, age, etc. And classification algorithms are used to forecast or classify the distinct values such as real or false, male or female, spam or not spam, etc. So when I work on a continuous numbers or statistics that has continuous nature, I would work with regression model. And on the other side, when I have discrete nature of statistics in my analysis, I would use the classification model. So to conclude that, there is a question to check the privacy settings of your GitHub repository and the video, as they will need to be visible to your tutor. Accordingly, I have provided this tool links for the repositories for SQL and the second one repository for Python. And at the same time, there will be another link here for this video for my tutor to review this task. Finally, to prepare this response, textbook and other online resources are used. And thank you for listening.